Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here, Endurance Nation, back with another weekly coach episode. This is an opportunity for you and I to connect. We can share some knowledge coming out of the team and also do a better job of interacting with you around the mental aspect of excellence in endurance sports. A huge part of what we do inside Endurance Nation is collect and share knowledge. We believe that the smarter athlete is the faster athlete. Now, we can all be smarter than we are right now, right? N+1, just always a little bit more. Sometimes that's hard to do when we're talking watts or seconds per mile or seconds per kilometer. But when it comes to thinking, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to execution and managing your own training, this is completely possible and reasonable. So in today's episode, talking a little bit about fitness. I get a lot of pushback in the wintertime with our out-season program. People want to get stronger and faster. The promise is that after 14 weeks, you'll have a higher bike strength. If you're doing our tri programs or cycling programs, you'll have higher run speed right at that half marathon distance by the time you get to the end. The idea being that this quality training is going to set you up a platform, if you will, that we can conduct the rest of our season off of. And what's unique about the out season inside Endurance Nation is that we leverage intensity to do this, simply because we don't have the cumulative fatigue associated with extensive volume, which is more race specific when it comes to endurance racing. That's how we've always done it. It's a unique approach. We get a lot of pushback from people inside the space, but it definitely works, especially for the time crunched age group athlete, just like you. So today's episode, I want to talk about what it means to add additional stress to your training without necessarily going up the zone ladder. When I say up the zone ladder, I mean, people will typically be in some place like, say, we're working out at zone 3, quality session, tempo work, 80 to 85% sort of in the FTP range, functional threshold power. And people will look at that and say, yeah, how am I going to get stronger if I'm just working at this level? If I want my threshold power to go up from 200 watts to 220 watts, I should be doing 200 watts or 210 watts or 220 watts. That totally makes sense to me. However, even though we're using intensity as a lever to make you fitter, it's really important to understand that the progression of the intensity still matters, even in the context of just 14 weeks. And so rather than just dialing things up and saying, why do zone 2 when I can do zone 4? Why do zone 4 when I can do zone 5? Why do zone 5 when I can do zone 5, 6, A, B, or C, or whatever else your software or platform or coach may tell you? Simply because more is not always better. More is just more. And better, we think about in the context of Endurance Nation, is what your return on training investment is. And so rather than having people just go harder, do more work, I like to think about adding resistance to your training as an opportunity for those athletes who feel as though the training program itself is just a little too easy, right? So we just want to make a little slight adjustment, right? If this was a shower, we want to just turn the nozzle a little bit. We're not going to just crank it all the way to that next setting and either freeze ourselves or scald ourselves, right? So here's how we would do that inside Endurance Nation. I call it adding resistance to your training. So the first thing that we do is we take that same effort. So we'll just stick with that zone 3 metaphor for right now. We'll say, okay, zone 3 time. And what we'll do instead of just ratcheting it up to zone 4 is we'll say, hey, let's add some intensity to it through hill work, through incline. So we'll have you do that same pace, but we'll do it in a place where you're going at a 3% or a 4% grade. Nothing too crazy. I don't want you running up a wall. I don't want you riding up a wall, but I want to add some resistance to the equation. So if we think about running outside, or those of you who are running, or even let's just go easier than let's just go driving in a car. You're driving on the highway. You've got your, whatever you call it. Good God, I'm thinking autopilot. Cruise control on. Thank you, like your autopilot. I bet some of you have an autopilot in your car. You've got cruise control on. You're going 65 miles an hour on the highway. It's great. Then the road starts to go up. And as the road goes up and hits like 3-4%, that speed starts to drop, right? Because the car was doing a certain rate of work, and that rate of work on the flats was an outcome of speed. And as that speed starts to drop, the work has to go up to accommodate it. And similarly speaking, when we think about athletes, as we make transitions in terms of elevation, it becomes harder for us to hold certain efforts simply because of the change of position, the change of condition. So first and foremost, we start here by adding some incline resistance. So if you're running and you're running a 9-minute mile, I say that's great. Why don't we run a 9-minute mile and we'll do some of that on a hill at 2 or 3%. Oh, that 9-minute mile is now a little bit harder to do, right? A little bit easier outside than if you're indoors on a fixed trainer setup, but you get the general sense of work here. So add that resistance through incline first. It gives you an opportunity to practice what it's like to be in the real world, because inclines are coming in the real world. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for you to dial in that resistance just enough that you'll feel a delta in your training without having to overachieve in terms of moving the whole number up the ladder, right? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 for us is to think about, how do we change intensity of your training through proximity, right? And by proximity, I mean actually bringing some workouts closer together. So we'll take a look at the structure of your week. Maybe you've got quality bike workouts, for example, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And we say we're trying to make these sessions harder for you without fundamentally changing the nature of the session themselves. And one of the ways that we can do that is to actually shrink the recovery time between these intervals. So on a Tuesday, Thursday program of cycling, typically on that Wednesday in Endurance Nation, you've got some kind of a run. So what we might do is extend that run, for example, if that's within your capacity. Another option to do is that we shorten the window between these sessions on Tuesday and Thursday. So you may move Tuesday's session to the evening and Thursday's session to the morning, for example. If we're really getting after it, we might make those Tuesday and Thursday sessions into Tuesday and Wednesday sessions, like Tuesday morning, Wednesday night, or maybe a Wednesday night race instead of a Wednesday night bike if you're on Zwift. The idea being that by compressing the recovery duration between the training sessions of this specific discipline, we can increase the stress on your body and make that work harder. So zone 3 becomes harder simply because you're doing zone 3 with fatigue now versus where you were before. So again, we're not moving up that intensity ladder, just going to zone 4, zone 5, arbitrarily tasting these different zones that oftentimes have different physiological outcomes from the type of training that we're doing. And instead, we're modifying, in this case, in step 2, the proximity of these workouts to make sure that the sessions are challenging enough to create the change that we want to see without jeopardizing potentially your overall fitness by having you overreach at a higher zone. Okay. It's also good practice for in-season training when we get back to the regular grind, simply because as the hours go up with our in-season training, all of a sudden, we don't have a lot of time between sessions, right? You move from 24 hours in the winter to like 12 hours, or sometimes during the day, like 6-7 hours between sessions, which is a fundamentally different undertaking logistically and physiologically. The third element or third option that we can look after is simply doing an increased workload, but do it in a descending manner. In other words, if we've tried the incline and we've tried the proximity and you say, coach, still just not really hard enough. I really want to go zone 4. I haven't tested for it. Like my FTP hasn't gone up or my run pace, my run speed hasn't improved, but I still want to do more work because this feels easy. Then this next option is to include that work, but to do it in a descending manner. In other words, if we had a 20-minute interval, let's say on the bike, and you're at zone 3 and you're like, it's too easy. Naturally, you just want to be like, I'll just do this for zone 4. Well, zone 4 for 20 minutes is a fundamentally different experience than zone 3. So instead, what I'd have you do is actually bump the work to the front of that interval. So I'll take that 20 minutes and I'll raise the first 5 up higher. So I'll say, I'll give you 5 minutes at zone 4, and then I want the rest at zone 3. In other words, we can use just a small amount of intensity at the front end of that interval set, raise your heart rate, create the strain on your system, and then have you maintain that zone 3 effort for the duration of that interval. So rather than finishing strong or negative splitting in a way, if we were outside, in this case, we're going to prime the work that we're going to be doing in zone 3 with a sort of crucial miniature block at the beginning in zone 4. Again, this is sort of overstimulation of the system, but it does create conditions whereby your normal zone 3 work, that normal work, which you were just saying is too easy, now isn't so easy anymore. And actually, in this case, gives you an opportunity to develop fluency between different zones and get comfortable with the different types of work. So rather than just having lots of work in zone 3 and then getting used to it, having not a lot of work, and then moving to zone 4 and saying lots of work and then going back, this is an opportunity for us to actually build some nuance around what it means to control your training. So the big takeaway here, as you're thinking about your training, as you're thinking about getting fitter and stronger, remember that just increasing the effort, just saying, oh, I'll just do these in zone 4 instead of zone 3, is not as important as making sure that you're getting the most out of the zone 3 effort that we want within the context of your overall season. If you're exiting the out season right into a race or into an indoor time trial or into a half marathon where you want to have that high end speed, then it's possible that doing some of that higher intensity work would make sense in the context of your training. But for most of us, the wintertime is the beginning of our year, and we want to do the work that we need to do to get stronger, but we don't want to overachieve just yet because there's plenty of good work to come in a place when we want to be peaking later as relative to your season and your goals. So let's be really smart about these efforts. So to recap, we did added resistance through incline. We did added resistance through proximity and managing your schedule. And finally, we did added resistance by priming those workouts with a small increment at the front in zone 4, or slightly harder, just to get you ready to go. All right, this has been Coach Patrick from Endurance Nation here with another coach lesson. If you want to learn more, check us out at endurancenation.us. We'd love to see you over there. You can always just sign up for our newsletter when you get to that main splash page and you come on the inside, you get access to some free resources and opportunity to join the team as well. All right, hope you're having a great season so far. You're staying warm, you're healthy, and you're safe. I'll talk to you soon.